Hi everyone, my name is Lily. I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to bring you the first of my 2023 wrap-up videos. I thought before I dive into videos about every specific category I read and how many I read and what were my top 10 basically of each section, today I'm just going to talk about my top 10 period. This was really hard for me, especially since I have 6.5 or basically 7 different categories. So I don't have 10 in every single category, but if I did, it would be like my top 10 of 70, which is still my top 70 of 386 books that I read in 2023. So, I mean, I'm narrowing it down quite a lot. But anyway, please go check out my full videos that will be coming later in the month for my kind of breakdown videos. Obviously, subscribe if you want to see them. Today, I'm just going to talk about the top 10. So basically, I was trying to think, if someone asked me, what book would you recommend from this genre, then I would kind of remember and I'd be able to do this. I will say though, I am not including sequels at all in this category of top 10. I don't think it's really fair because I feel like when you're reading a sequel, so much of your opinion about the sequel is informed by how you felt about the first book. So just because of that, I've excluded sequels, but sequels are going to be their whole other category for my future 2023 favorites. So let's just start off with the first one, which obviously, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I love the books by R.F. Kuang. I love the Poppy War series. So I picked Babel for my pick. This is only one of, I think, the 4 or 5 different editions I have of Babel, but I picked this one. This is the Fox Inwood one just because I love the alternate cover. I also love that it came with a normal US cover as well, so I can switch it when I want. You can also tell in my tabs, I did a reread of this in 2023, and it kind of remembered why I love this book so much. But Babel is one of the ones that I had to include in this list. I think that when people were asking me kind of what my top favorite book was, this is the very easy one that has come out in my mind. I just love this book. I have a whole video about this book, so I will link that below. So the next one's actually a novella, and it's The Lies of the Adjungo. And this one, I remember specifically finishing this novella and immediately going to tell everyone that I knew about what happened in this novella, with and without spoilers, depending on the person. So that's why I had to include it, because I feel like it's really rare that I'll finish a book Sorry if you can hear my dishwasher. I think it's really rare that I'll finish a book and immediately need to go share it with everyone. I mean, out of 386 books, this is one that really kind of stuck the most in my memory. I have other ones as well that I did from last year, but this is the one where I really remember like immediately finishing it, taking a moment, and then like standing up, and I was like, hey, I need to tell you about this book. This novella is so fabulous. It's also the beginning of a series. It just felt so wise and profound while also being very short at the same time. So definitely recommend that one. And then the final one in the category of adult science fiction fantasy is The First Bright Thing, which is this queer speculative fiction story about magical powers, about the responsibility of powers, and also about kind of the importance of choice and manipulation. It has a toxic relationship as well, or the past echoes of a toxic relationship. This one is just so many things. I remember that I was reading this while hiking, while walking, because I knew that I had to finish what I was reading. I loved it so much. There are going to be memories, of course, with a lot of the books that made my top 10, but that's one of my most treasured, I guess, reading memories of 2023, and so that's why that one is here. That finishes the adult sci-fi fantasy. Now I'm going to move on to romance. The first one is Vera Wong's I don't remember it. I think it's Vera Wong's Unsolicited Guide to Murders. In my hastily scratched notes, I just wrote Vera Wong, but it's Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. This was so fun. I've read a few of this author's books before, but this is definitely my favorite. It is a great blend between romantic elements, between mystery, between also like the cutest grandma character ever. Found family, found friendships as well are included in this one. And it's one of these kind of like genre blends between romance and mystery. that I just really, really love. I think this is a great kind of read for a friend or a family member who hasn't been reading a lot and kind of wants to sink into a cozier mystery story with stakes, but not like, I mean, there are stakes and it does get kind of intense in some parts, but in general, it feels very like a cozy mystery kind of story. The next one is Ever After Always, which I think is, I don't know if this is my favorite book by this author. I actually am going to do like a whole video about this author. This probably is my favorite of the Bergman Brothers series, which I'm going to do a whole video on because I kind of read, I didn't read this one. I read the second one with Ren and Frankie first, and then I went back and read the first, and now have been reading like everyone can that has come out afterwards, and I love the series so much. I'm currently reading the one with Oliver. I don't remember what it's called, but Ever After Always was my favorite of this series so far. I loved this idea of a marriage in crisis. I love this idea of reconciling with someone that you love and also with the way that you have changed as well. I think this is such a profound and not also often talked about in romance books. So loved this one of the whole series, and also had to mention it as well because this whole series has kind of really made my last year. That finishes up the romance books. We are, quickly moving on. We're moving on to the YA science fiction fantasy books. This Dark Descent, which to me was pitched as Scorpio Races meets, what was it? I was like, Jewish mob star Mario Kart meets Scorpio Races, I feel like is how that was pitched to me. But anyway, it has the horse element, the games element of Scorpio Races, but it adds extra danger, adds extra stakes. The found friendship group crew dynamic is so fabulous. The magic system is well thought out and nuanced and detailed. It was so I said so fabulous like 3 times in the last couple minutes, but it is something that kind of picked me up and propelled me. I love the Jewish magic parts of the story, and I cannot wait for the second one. The next one is The Scarlet Alchemist. Kylie Lee Baker is an auto-buy author ever since The Empress of Night and The Kingdom of Night, I think. I'm really bad, honestly, with titles now after 386 books. But The Scarlet Alchemist had this signature heroine who does not mind getting some blood on her hands, ruthless, ambitious. I loved it so much. I loved her so much, but I also loved the chaotic, like, sibling energy in The Scarlet Alchemist. I loved the magic. I loved the eat the rich vibes. Like, all of this kind of culminated in probably, one of my favorite YA fantasy books of the last year. The next one is one that I have. It is Catfish Rolling. I have kind of raved about this now a lot. I love that the Catfish Rolling uses these liminal spaces, these time pockets in the story as kind of metaphors for biracial identity, metaphors for memory, and for the ways that we can feel like time is passing really quickly and time is passing really slowly. This was just one of those things where it has this premise that feels so metaphorical and feels so expansive, and then the author just so beautifully examines those to an end which feels satisfying. It's not just really shallow. It feels satisfyingly resolved and explored throughout the story. I cannot recommend this book more highly. The next one is Warrior Girl Unearthed, which I have a copy of. Actually, the ones that I'm not showing for, I know that I have copies of, but I cannot find them. Warrior Girl Unearthed was fabulous. It is by the same author as Firekeeper's Daughter, I think. I'm really struggling here. But what I loved about Warrior Girl Unearthed is the conversations it has about the acquisitions, specifically by museums, private collectors, universities, academia, research of artifacts, and specifically indigenous artifacts, so artifacts that are important to people's families, ancestral artifacts, but then because of, archaeology and like history are not being returned back to the families and to the tribes, even though they are petitioning for it. This is incredibly relevant to today. We see this a lot in museum acquisitions, museums who are acquiring things that they probably shouldn't be and definitely shouldn't have done at the time and not giving them back. And then they talk about this in Warrior Girl on Earth as well, about academia and research and having to prove all of these different things. And I thought that it was such a timely and such a beautifully discussed topic in the ways that it talks about our rage, how do we make change in this kind of system, what do we do to work within the system, the racism against us historically and also in the present. You know, we have this idea in some respects, or some people have this idea in some respects, that these kinds of actions are not, these kinds of racist actions are not as much of an issue anymore. And I would argue that it's not so much of an issue. The ways that these sentiments are kind of disseminated in racism are a little bit more insidious, a little bit more implicit. And I think this is a perfect example of that. That also goes into why I really loved Love Boat Forever, which is my next pick. It also talks about museum acquisition, specifically a musical instrument in her own family. But I think what it talks about is like not realizing how your personal views, your personal values of what is worthwhile, what is valuable, what is art, what is music, can be so impacted by where you grew up. So for example, Pearl grew up in the United States, and so a lot of her cultural touch points for example, music, right? What is great music is so influenced by European history, so influenced by European musical history. And so there are other, obviously, music parts in the world, and I think that this starts that conversation about chatting about how important it is to think about the scope, the global scope of all of these kinds of art forms and legacies and everything like that. So that is that my last pick? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is my last pick for my top 10 of 2023. This was incredibly difficult, and also there were so many middle grade books that I wanted to include as well. But because I feel like I have a little bit different criteria when I rate and review middle grade books, I did not include that category in this big favorites, but definitely stay tuned. I will include middle grade in an entire own video. I would love to know what some of your top 10 reads of 2023 were, and I will see you in one of my next 2023 favorites videos. Okay, bye.